Hi, everybody. John Anz again with Ashtonwood House Concerts. And we are just 4 or 5 days away from yet another, actually, our final concert of the 2023 season. This Friday, October 27th, 7 p.m. And we will have the pleasure of having back in the house once again Matt and Atla DeChamplain, and coming with them this time, a multi-instrumentalist and also vocalist Evan Arnztzen. So we've got some people to talk to and some people to meet, so we're going to bring them in right now. So, as I just told everybody, we've got our final concert of the season coming up this Friday, October 27th, 7 p.m. And for the what will seem like the umpteenth time, we get to work with Matt and Atla, who are well known to our audiences up here in South Hadley. But for the very first time, at least for our more usual suspect audience, Evan, you'll be here for the first time. So Matt and Atla, briefly, and things have changed since the last time we saw you anyway. So tell us what you're up to now, where you're doing it, and what you've been up to lately.
Well, we, of course, along with Evan, just played at the Side Door a couple, I think maybe a month ago, a few weeks back, in Old Lyme, Connecticut. And we both have kind of been freelancing in a lot of different bands. Right now, I'm the musical director for Sean Montero. Been working with a variety of people throughout the region. So and Atla just played with the New London Big Band last night. But we haven't really been playing too much together. So we're really looking forward to this. It'll be a nice reunion.
Yeah, the last couple times that we have played together, though, we've been welcoming Evan to our trio of sorts, or expanding it from there. So we're pretty excited to be developing this project with him.
Great, and just remind people, both of you now are doing, what are you doing work-wise, most days?
Oh, I'm teaching amplified voice, so everything except classical singing at the University of Rhode Island, which is thrilling.
Yeah, I feel like I have three jobs. I'm full time at the Hart School, and performing musician, and taking care of our kids.
Awesome. So, Evan, please, you may need a little longer introduction. Tell us everything that anybody who doesn't know you needs to know about you.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. I'm the newcomer to the area, to New England. Um, I am originally Canadian. I'm still
You're still
Canadian.
Canadian. Good.
But I'm from Vancouver, Canada. And I grew up in a musical family, and a lot of exposure to early jazz through my grandfather. So that's something that I think we have in common with Matt and Atlas. So I was really excited to meet them and learn that aspect of their histories. My grandfather had me learning New Orleans jazz, particularly by clarinet players like Jimmy Noon and Sidney Bechet, Johnny Dodds, Louis Armstrong, and Jelly Roll Morton when I was very, very young. And then kind of like put that on the side burner for a long time and played the tenor saxophone in more modern jazz bands, etc. And got a degree in saxophone playing, moved to New York, and started getting back into clarinet and working in traditional jazz bands in New York. I was there for about 7 years. And then fast forward to 2020 when my wife got a job up here working on a book about Sonny Rollins, and now is a newspaper editor in the area. We started putting down roots in Northampton. Now we live in East Hampton, Mass, and we love it. That's my story in about 30 seconds or however long that took.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. And you covered a lot of distance there, not only, where you've been, but also the influences you've had. Matt and Atla, remind folks some of your, great influences, vocally, instrumentally.
Sure. So also, like Evan said, I don't have a musical family. My family is very eclectic in their musical interests, but we did start going to a traditional jazz festival in Connecticut called the Great Connecticut Traditional Jazz Festival. Because it was local, like for no other reason than they had a campground and it seemed like a fun idea. and it kind of transformed our whole family, just falling in love with the music and specific groups that would come back every year, specifically an incredible traditional jazz group from Paris called Paris Washboard, which has an excellent clarinetist. So I actually started on the clarinet, much like Evan, but as a talentless clarinetist, I soon moved to singing. But yeah, my original influences were all very early traditional sounds, Louis Armstrong, of course, and then quickly Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, all the big top three vocalists for that early swing era. And I've been, lucky enough to study with tons of people who brought me, further into more current jazz, but I still have a huge heart for traditional jazz music, and the roots, the New Orleans roots that Evan was talking about as well.
Yeah, and I feel like I am in a lot of different places musically, all within the jazz idiom, and I love them equally. At the end of the day, my heart still, I identify with stride piano so strongly. One of my teachers actually was Jeff Barnhart, who, interestingly enough, if you go on YouTube, I was just watching a concert that he did right before COVID that Evan was a part of, and your brother on guitar. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name at the moment.
Yeah, Arndt.
Right. Yeah, and so he's an absolutely fabulous stride pianist, and so knowledgeable about the music, and I learned a lot from him. And like Atla, I've had a lot of great teachers, a variety of teachers, teaching a variety of styles through bebop, and I studied with Andy Laverne, who was one of the last students of Bill Evans. So, but I think with this particular group, what we're looking to do is kind of work, at least for me personally, I'm trying to capture some of that sound within the stride world, and within great players like Dave McKenna and Oscar Peterson and folks like that.
Right. Evan, I actually, and you in your intro, you were alluding mostly to the sort of the musical thing, it influences. Are there players that you particularly maybe more modern than the stuff you were listening to early on that have influenced you?
Oh yeah, I mean, early on, I just kind of made it my business to listen to as many people, especially who played my instrument, but as many things within the jazz idiom and beyond, as I could. So I just, and I really got together with certain records. I don't even feel like I've listened to, like, as many records as certain people have, but something, and this is something I often tell students, it's like, if you have five that you really know, you know what I mean, that's kind of better than just listening to everything once, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know, and I'm not even answering your question, but in terms of players, on tenor saxophone, I really fell in love with Dexter Gordon and Sonny Rollins and John Coltrane when I was in high school, and then got into like Seamus Blake, and who's a Vancouver local boy, made it good on the world stage, and like Mark Turner and Joshua Redman and Chris Potter, and all sorts of modern tenor saxophonists. That was kind of like my college years, and then I started going back like deeper into like Gene Ammons, and I mean, the list goes on, and then clarinet players, I could talk all day about it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's great. So Matt alluded briefly to what we're doing with this ensemble and this show coming up on Friday. Now, I've seen all three of you play recently together, but obviously that was a larger ensemble and in a larger room. And so what, I mean, talk a little bit more about what this group as a trio will either sound like, or either how it limits you, or maybe how it expands some of the things that you might take on Friday night. I know I will say this: when we were putting this together, I was first just talking to Matt and Atla, and she was very concerned that there'd be no bass in the room, and Matt had to tell her, "Don't worry, I've got this. I've got this."
Yeah, I definitely had to go. I've been going back, working on my walking bass lines and walking tenths and stride. Um, I think, yeah, when you heard us last, we had bass and drums. So in this more intimate setting, it's a smaller group, a different sound, different complexion of the sound, or text, different textures. But I think it's also easier for us to be able to go in different directions. We can be able to communicate that to each other, since this is an improvisatory music. It makes it easier, instead of trying to signal to 5 people or to 4 other people that we're going to maybe go this way, or we're going to change keys all of a sudden, go up a half step, whatever. It makes it a little bit easier. And a lot of the music that Evan and Atla and myself listen to, a lot of it doesn't have bass, or if there is bass or tuba, the piano player kind of runs the I hate to say this, runs the rhythm section. At least it was that way back in the day, Duke Ellington, in the 20s and 30s. So I like the challenge of being in charge of the rhythm section, and then I like the challenge of being able to find the best way to support and accompany, great players like Evan and Atla. So I'm looking forward to it.
Evan, I was going to let me ask you. Matt and Atla have been in our living room a couple of times. Once with an audience and once without an audience, when we were in the literally the dead of COVID. Have you played a house concert sort of environment before? Is that something that you like, don't like, wish you hadn't been asked?
I hate it. No, man, that's really, I mean, I feel at home in that kind of environment. I feel like, because like I said, musical family I grew up with, every Christmas party, everything, like it was always a jam session, and we just get instruments out and play together. So, that kind of feeling is what I'm searching for always, whether it's a huge stage or an actual living room. I mean, it's easier to access that way, right? Because it's just, you get that living room intimacy kind of feeling, and it's so amazing to communicate with an audience when they're literally sitting with you there, and to communicate as a band in that environment. You can hear everything so well acoustically, which at most of the time we're at the mercy of sound systems that can kind of like, they're necessary, to reach that crowd that's out there, but it's usually you're making a compromise, at least in my view, in terms of, and you don't have to make that compromise when it's just acoustic sound. I don't know if you're going to use a mic, Atla. I mean, that would be fine.
Well, again, with the other 2 instruments, we will Atla will be mic'd, and so there will be a little reinforcement there, but no one else will need anything. So
anyway, yeah, to answer your question, I'm very much looking forward to it. So
that's great. And so without giving the set list away, not that of course it's made up yet, that'll probably be done at around 6:45, I assume, Friday night. But what, again, you talked a little bit about, Matt, what this might look like, but where do you see this going? It's also, as I recognize looking at the calendar, we are in a season of a variety of tunes that may or may not work their way in. But you tell, what will we hear on Friday night?
So I think there's this sweet spot that people don't talk about as much. When I think about this particular ensemble, with or without bass and other instruments, I am constantly trying to channel my best Nat King Cole vibe, because the sound was so quintessentially Cole, and he never pushed. It was just like so easy that it almost feels, it can feel light until you try to do it and you realize how difficult it was to create these incredible arrangements and make them feel easy and wonderful. I saw Matt with another clarinetist in the area once, and it just blew my mind because they hadn't rehearsed. It was just kind of a cold call. And I happened to go to this concert and see both of them perform duo. And they knew so much of the same music that it was one of the most exciting concerts I'd ever been to. And I was just awestruck. So in my musical life, that's what I'm constantly looking for, are people that have listened to the same music, who love the same music, so that you have that vibe of these incredible trios like the Nat King Cole trio or the Oscar Peterson trio, people who played together for decades and decades, because they have so much in common musically. And certainly there's the sweet spot that we all have for swing and early jazz, and also this period that Matt and I generally refer to as pre-bop, which is really sophisticated swing, not yet bebop. That is so alluring to me and so fantastic. And I know that both Evan and Matt have done as much listening to that era and specific kind of niche as I have. So without giving too much away, we have plans, John, and then we'll be
No doubt.
But really what I'm looking for is to just, connect with them and the audience on music that has been so meaningful and powerful to us, and just try to enjoy it so others can too.
Well said.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. And I will say I do know what you mean. The first time, well, not the first time I ever saw Evan play, but I think the second time, certainly the longest and the most close up I've ever heard Evan play was when I was down in Hartford, and Evan and Matt were playing simply in duo at the I think it was just duo at a church down there for their series that normally was at the library, but I guess they got moved because of something that happened. Yeah. But that was an awesome concert, and I think it was probably around that time that I thought, we may need to get these people together more often.
Yeah, I mean, if I can just say, I appreciate the opportunity and talk about your cold calls. I was brought in, I think, the day before or something, for that concert, and
Was that the Blue River Jazz Band, I think, and then
Yes, because Chris, got hit COVID. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
fortunately that was a COVID got in the way scenario, but for better or for worse, I benefited because I got to go and play with Matt, and yeah,
We all benefited. Yeah.
well, anyway, yeah, I mean, I love playing with Matt and Atla, and it's like, Atla was just speaking about the musical sort of game plan. Yeah, I want to, express my support of that as well, and say that I'm very much looking forward to it.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I mean, well, we're very, very excited. And again, I have no doubt that you guys are, have your hands on the wheel of this thing. And so we'll just wait and see what happens. So other than that, I think, again, it's this Friday, 7:00, here in South Hadley, in our house. We'll be full, and we will really, really be looking forward to it. And between now and then, we just hope you guys have a great week. And see, Atla, duty calls.
Here are kids in the back.
Mom duty.
sure, if you were hearing the Spider-Man theme song, we're not going to be featuring that one on Friday.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, we can't wait. We hope you guys have a great week, and we will see you here on Friday night.
We're looking forward to it.
Thanks so much, John.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Take care.